Okay, this is my testimony. I was baptized Methodist when I was 2. We moved up to Hillsboro around February of '92. Ray and my mom got married in August of '92. We started going to a Baptist church in Waco. And me, Mom, and Marcy all got baptized Baptist in that church in Waco. I believed Jesus died for my sins and I was going to heaven. My stepdad, Ray, he was a big influence on my life while growing up. He did some fill-in preaching occasionally, and while he was back there studying, we would go back there and he would read different Bible stories to us. Good memories there. I've been on 2 mission trips to Mexico while in youth. On the second mission trip is when I found out about halfway through the week that my stepdad had brain cancer. And luckily I was with friends and family there. Anyways, about 3 months later, he went to be with the Lord. So after that, I was out of youth, kind of got away from church a little bit, being a young adult, thinking I knew everything. I met Katie, and we started going to church occasionally. The biggest excuse I used was I like to sleep in. It's my day off because I work 6 days a week. So, anyway, so that worked for a little while, but obviously not a good deal there. Stephen and Mary Beth invited us to come to a Easter program or to work at one, and so we came. Of course, I knew Stephen I met him in '02. We Mary Beth sometime around '98-ish, and so anyway, so we came here. We enjoyed it. Enjoyed hanging out with people here, and we ended up joining. Well, before that, take that back. We got married in '08. Me and Katie did. Then we joined the church sometime around there. I don't remember exact year. Was it after? Okay, it's after that. We started a men's Bible study about 5.5 years ago. We would meet at Whataburger. There would be 4 or 5 of us. Then we started meeting at Stephen's house, and then we now meet at my house, which is a big deal because nobody goes to my house, or in my house for that matter. But I have grown over the last year. Yes, I have definitely grown over the last several years. Well, hey, there's certain time frames there. Anyways, and I have gained 3 very close friends, Stephen, Richard, and Brian. And now my neighbor Jose, I've got him coming to Bible study on Tuesday night or Thursday nights. So that's a good thing. Let's see here. I became Stephen's right-hand man, aka the Moo, a few years ago. Became a co-youth leader back in May. And I didn't realize, over the last 10 years we've been here, that there's way more to being a Christian than just joining a church and sitting in a pew. You really got to, show your life, read the Bible, show it in your life. People can see Jesus through you. So that's all I got.
Hello.
Hi.
I walked the aisle and became a Christian back when I was 9 years old, back in late 1976. And I was in and out of church, as a kid and a teenager, until the late 80s, when I went to Central and met Buddy Brents. He encouraged me to join the youth with him, to help him with the youth, to drive the van when they went on trips. And I got real involved in it. I was real happy, involved in church. Go every Sunday, Wednesday, Friday night youth meeting. And then, after he left, I was working with Steve with the youth. When I met Steve, we hit it off just like that from the beginning. then we kind of grew apart. After I started PSTI in 90, kind of, grew out of the church because I was in school back and forth and kind of got away from it. And I got married in 92. Me and my wife, we were in and out of churches all the time, so we never really joined. I was still a member of Central, so we were there for a little bit. But when we moved out of town, we got away from Central. When we moved back, I tried to start, I went back, and it had grown so big, I really wasn't comfortable with the church. So we really didn't go there much until Stephen took over out here. We kept asking him to come out and visit. I would come every once in a while, but every time I always try to make the excuse of I don't have enough gas to come out here every Sunday, or my wife didn't want to go, I didn't want to come by myself, and I was making a lot of excuses. I was like Russell, I worked 6 days a week until I started covering lumber in 05, and I worked 6 days a week, and it was my only day off. Making all these lousy excuses really wasn't what I should do. But after we were doing that for a while, then my stepson got married, had a son, and then he had a daughter in 09. And she lived to be 8 months old. She died in her sleep. Crib there, and that really hit me. I started thinking, I think I really need to get back in the church, involved in the church. So I come back out here, eventually joined out here. I started getting Steve, we started working. I started getting more and more involved in the church. I've been going ever since. Now every Sunday. I got involved with the church council, with men helping work on the church. It's just been going ever since. But now I'm the sound man. Still church council now. That's just about it. That's about it.
I think they had a little bet going on whether or not I would take longer than both of theirs combined. But I don't see how they could have bet, because both of them would have bet on the over. The guess is probably right. I will probably take longer than both of them combined. But that's because me and God have had a long and torrid relationship. It's kind of love-hate. I think he loves to hate the fact that he loves me. Because I have not always been the best person. My story really shouldn't take that long due to the fact that most of you have heard my story probably before. But I'm going to tell it all over again anyway. When I was 11, I was first saved. And I did that out of fear because our preacher at the time, a pastor by the name of Tom Owens, was doing a Sunday night Bible study on Revelation. As an 11-year-old, hearing the stories from Revelation will scare you to death because there's things in there that you're not supposed to hear at 11 years old. So I got my fire insurance, if you want to say it that way. I felt like I needed it. But I really wasn't what I would call a Christian. I was probably the best student in my Sunday school class. My mom happened to be the teacher. Kind of helps, because if I don't get the questions right, I get to hear about it later. Yeah, and she was really good about putting a little screws to you later. But moving on, I kind of got out of the church when that church decided to close. I didn't move on to Central, which was the parent church of Open Door. I don't know if any of y'all know that. But Central was our parent church. All the letters got moved over, but you still had to quote unquote join the church. Well, I never actually went to church to join the church. I just kind of was able to chill, because for the first time in 2 years, I didn't have to go to church every Sunday. I have to go to church every Saturday. I could stay at home, I could watch football, which was important. That was the most important thing. And, you know, I could actually concentrate on school and whatnot. Richard decided to start going to church around the time that I was 14, 15. And all of a sudden, I needed to start going back to church. Thanks a lot, Richard. Because he was having such a good time on Friday night. Brian, you gotta come, you gotta come. No, I really don't need to. I'm good. As usual, it took a while for God to convince me that I needed to go back to church. God has a habit of having to hit me with something hard to influence my decision. I did eventually go. I got involved in the youth, and we started doing some pretty good things out of that youth group. I mean, we started seeing some change in lives, which is in fact the reason for being Christian, to change lives. But unfortunately, because I'm hard-headed, it didn't last long. Stephen came in. Stephen was a great youth director. I don't know if any of y'all know that. But Stephen was a great youth director. He will still to this day deny it, but he was. But he kind of moved on. I kind of moved on. I had to go to work. Well, going to work gave me an excuse to not go to church. Because I was working and going to school, I had an out. It's funny how the devil uses those little outs to wedge in there as many times as possible. When that happened, I fell out of church. It was slow. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen immediately. But the progress was going to church every once in a while, going to church every once in a while, maybe going to a youth event every so often, to going to church once a month, going to church once every 2 months, not going to church. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't that big a deal anymore. You lose touch. And I did for a long time. It wasn't until I was in my second year of college that a friend of mine from school that I had went to high school with, his name is Jimmy, came to my house. Had never been to my house to my knowledge, but he literally came to my house and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Nothing. He goes, "Well, we're the Baptist Student Union, which I am now president of, needs you to get involved." I was like, "Yeah." Oh, I did. Jimmy's a good guy. He understood it. But I did go. I wanted to see what he was talking about. He gave us, he gave me several reasons why I needed to see what was happening. And around that time I was having an epiphany anyway, that maybe church wasn't such a bad idea. Because it was around that time that I found out that Mom had cancer. And I felt like I was being punished by my mother receiving cancer. It took me months, maybe even a year or so, to realize that her getting cancer and her passing away, not about me. It affected me. I had to deal with it. I dealt with it a whole lot easier whenever I was in church and whenever I had those relationships and that relationship with Christ. But it wasn't about me. It was about her time to go home. It was about her job on this earth was done. She had a job to do and she had finished. That's not my issue. But it was my issue because I made it all about me. As usual. I made it about me. But during that time with the Baptist Student Union, I got to see lives change again. And again, I still walked away again. Over and over. I see this pattern of behavior where I come in and I get involved and I see change and I see the effect that Christ has, but I still walk away from it after a period of time. And that was never a good thing. As a matter of fact, I told Steve when I started coming here, after going to church in Houston, after my children were born, me and my wife sat down and said, we need our children to have some kind of biblical background, to have some kind of biblical base, which means we need to start going to church. We decided that together. We went to church. Obviously, you all know that my marriage dissolved. But at least for a short time, my children got to see a biblical relationship with Christ. After that time with my wife, I stayed in the church. I didn't run away. I didn't give it up. And I was still active in the church for most of my time right at the end while I was in Houston. I had started a Bible study that was for singles, and we were actually growing at one point. I had to go to work, and I had to leave for a few months at a time because I was going over the road. I was not going over the road, but I was doing turnarounds in chemical plants, which forced me to be away from my group. So the group had to grow without me. I still showed up when I could when I was back in Houston. And I was still active in that church at the time that the accident happened and I had to move back here. And I moved back here and I started coming to church right away. As a matter of fact, it's one of the first things I asked Richard. I said, "Are you still going to church here?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Good, I want to come with you." Not because I thought all of a sudden God was going to heal everything and I was going to get to move back with my family. knew that wasn't going to happen. Me and God made an agreement that I would actually get into a church, stay in a church, and I would make a commitment to make a life here for the first time since leaving here over 16 years ago. And I have done that. Since being back in Hillsboro, I got involved in this church. And in the beginning, I told Steve, I said, look, I'm not going to be here every time the door opens because I don't want to burn myself out. So I told him, right?
Yep.
I don't want to get involved with everything that y'all do every time because I don't want to burn myself out. I've burned myself out a few times. But then one night, I'm out here on a Wednesday. It was a Wednesday night Bible study, right? And me and Steve and Beverly were talking, and it was just the three of us here, and we're talking about the young people in the church. We're talking about how the church really needs a youth group because there's too many young kids and too many youth, and they're all in one class, and they're not being equally taught. And we started talking about the possibility of actually forming a youth group. And I wasn't going to get involved. And I wasn't going to try to burn myself out. But all of a sudden, here I was volunteering to start a youth group as long as I had a partner who was closer to their age, who could better identify with those students. Thank you, Katie. Since then, y'all know the rest of the story. You know, I was a youth director for 4 years, until this past fall when Russell took over for me because I had to go to work and I knew I was going to be working on Sundays. I knew I was going to be working a lot of nights. There were going to be times when I wasn't going to be there and it wasn't going to be possible to actually form those relationships, keep those relationships. Thank you, Russell. And that's my story. The story is God never left. God never went away. It was always me who kept walking away and having to come back. And he, most of the time, had to grab me and drag me back. And sometimes it was a 2x4 and sometimes it was the middle of a road. As I went sliding down at 50 miles an hour. Things like that are what God does. Because God still wants to keep us close. God will do whatever it takes to keep you close if you're a Christian. If you're a real Christian. For a long time, I had it in my head. I didn't have it in my heart. I know by the time I entered college, I had it in my heart. I just didn't always want to live it out. I wanted to have fun. I didn't always agree with what God wanted me to do. But at 40, I know for sure it's a whole lot more fun to see lives changed and to be involved than it is to just do your own thing and be lonely all the time. Thank you for